Good evening and welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to our alumni who've joined us here in person in the Life Sciences Building Auditorium, and to all of our alumni who will be watching this program when we send it out afterwards. I'm Joe Eckert, Vice President for Institutional Advancement here at Del Val, and we'd like to welcome you to the inaugural program called Presidential Perspectives. This is part of our alumni outreach efforts and a new program, thanks to Amanda Goodwin, our Director of Alumni Engagement, for putting this together. And before we get started, just a few notes about tonight's program and some logistics. We have solicited questions from alumni in advance, so we will be talking through some of those issues tonight. And then we will also be taking questions from the studio audience. We will try to address as many questions as possible and give each of you a chance to get to know Dr. Gallo and her perspective on Del Val in her first year. Joining me tonight on stage is my co-host for this evening, Alumni Council President Melissa Roseman. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Joe.
And of course, our guest of honor, Del Val President Dr. Maria Gallo. Welcome, Dr. Gallo.
Thank you, Joe.
Melissa, if you can tell some of the folks in our studio audience who haven't had the chance to meet you yet, maybe a little bit about yourself, that would be wonderful.
Wonderful. My name is Melissa Roseman. I am the president of the Alumni Association of Delaware Valley University. I graduated in class of 2008 with a zoo science undergrad as well as a pre-veterinary minor. I also continued my education at Delaware Valley University and received my MBA class of 2010.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. And Dr. Gallo, it's amazing how time flies, but it's been 9 months now pretty much, right?
Absolutely, yes.
That's time does fly. So we're going to talk a little bit with Dr. Gallo about her perspective on some things that she's seen and talk about some of the questions that people have submitted. And maybe we'll start with Dr. Gallo, with your educational background and a number of different institutions where you've been, coming from some wonderful large public institutions and to a small private Del Val. What are some of the interesting components of Del Val that you've experienced as you've been traveling and getting to know all the people here?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that impresses me the most about Del Val are the alumni and the students and faculty and staff. They absolutely love Del Val. So everywhere I go, when they find out that I am president at Del Val, they have wonderful stories to tell about students that have worked for them or interned for them, or them personally if they've come and studied at Del Val, just the wonderful experiences that they've had. So I think that the tradition and the quality of the students really shines here at Del Val, and that's been more exceptional than any other place that I've been associated with. So that to me is quite commendable. And everyone here, the students, the community here at Del Val, the community as far as Doylestown and Bucks County have been very, very welcoming. And like I said, have just really praised everything about Del Val and what we have to offer. And I find people in Doylestown and Bucks County and the surrounding areas also to be quite progressive. So that's very refreshing for me.
I know alumni are very eager to know. What are some of your favorite things about Del Val so far?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the students really are my favorite thing. The students here are hardworking, very engaging, sincere, and it's a joy to be around them. So whenever I get an opportunity, I like to be with the students. And I was even a prize for them at one point because they were doing a hunt. And, if they got the president, it was like 50 points or something, I don't know. But anyway, so they're great, great young people. And to me, that's the most favorite thing. I think the beauty of the campus is also something else that is exceptional here. It just has a wonderful feel, and anybody who comes on campus, they comment at how beautiful the campus is. And the other thing that I really love, especially this time of year, is the birth of the farm animals, particularly the horses. And so they're foaling now, and we get pictures and updates of the foals, and that's just special. You don't get that at very many places. And having the SEPTA train station right on campus also is one of my favorite things, because the access then to going down to Philly and then from there other places is quite an advantage.
That was my favorite part of Del Val too, was the SEPTA train station going into Philadelphia. That was a lot of fun.
And I have to chime in on the animals perspective as a person who grew up in Brooklyn, New York, hadn't seen a lot of baby pigs. And when we had a chance to go to the Swine Science Center early in the year, those little ones,
They're the cutest.
aren't they? They're precious. They are just precious. Absolutely. We mentioned we did solicit some questions, and we are going to go through some of the ones that people had submitted in advance. So we'll talk about a few of those, and this stays in the agricultural farm area. Steve, an alum from the class of 2009 in Pennsylvania, had asked, the university has many unique assets, including the Roth property and the Gemmel farm. What do you see, Dr. Gallo, as some of the opportunities, challenges, thoughts about the rich land that comprises all of the property that is a part of the Del Valle community?
That's a very good question, and we have great opportunities there to utilize those properties effectively. So we formed a land use committee. On that committee are Del Valle administrators, faculty, and also board members to take a good hard look at what these different properties have, the advantages they have, I should say, and how we could best use those. So we're going to start convening that committee and dovetail that in with the strategic planning so that we can do market analysis and see what are the best uses that fit in with our mission, and also at least be revenue neutral, if not revenue generating. So I think it has to be comprehensive, and I think I also want to add that it has to be a holistic look, so we look at all of our properties together and form a long-range use plan relative to all the properties, so that we're not doing just one-off here or there, but also taking advantage of any opportunities that come up as well.
And if I remember correctly, last summer, wasn't there somebody who was sort of an amateur photographer from Hawaii who spent some time at a Gemmel? Does that ring a bell?
I had the wonderful opportunity of staying at the Gemmel property, the cottage there, before moving into the president's house, and it's just simply breathtaking. Beautiful, beautiful land there, and I thought a little bit about staying there the whole time, but not as good as being right on campus, but great, great property.
Dr. Gallo, Kevin from the class of 96, also from Pennsylvania, asked, what do you see as some of the greatest financial challenges for Del Valle the next few years?
I think, like a lot of other small schools, especially, there are a lot of challenges that face us. The high school demographics are going down, so there's fewer students graduating from high school. And I think on a national level, between 2014 and 2023, the percentage of students will decrease by about 2.3% to 2.5%. So that's a challenge for us, so we'll have to recruit very hard to keep enrollment numbers up. Luckily, right now, we don't have a problem. We're hitting our enrollment targets, but a lot of effort goes into that, and so that's definitely going to be a challenge. Along with getting students to come here is the discount rates that we provide, just like all the other schools do. Nationally, it's about 54% discount rate, and small privates like ours are in like the mid-50s. And we're right around 50% for us. So I think we really have to examine that. That's, as everybody says, that's not an extremely sustainable model. So as we look at enrolling more students, we also have to look at the opportunity to make it affordable for them, and then how do we fund that discount rate and give them the scholarships and the fellowships that they need to come here. We also need to grow our endowment, and so that this way the interest that we get off our endowment can fund more scholarships, fund other operations. So that's a challenge. We have to grow alumni giving. Giving is about at 6%, and so that has to increase, and it's not really the amount of money as it is the percentage, how many alumni are giving. And that metric weighs in a lot when we get evaluated on a national level and compared. It's alumni giving as a percentage is evaluated. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the proposed federal budget is going to be a challenge. I think everybody in higher ed is looking at the cuts to, proposed cuts anyway, to financial aid and other attributes that are in the federal budget. So I think those are all the main challenges that we face.
Those are actually great points. We talked a lot about that at our last alumni council meeting. We brought some of those points up. So thank you so much for sharing that. Those are wonderful.
So it's actually a follow-up thinking about that. So in the undergraduate world, you talked about the discount rate and financial aid, and I remember less than 10 years ago, institutionally, we were giving, I think, $18 million in financial aid or so, and now that number is north of 25 million, right? Because families need that financial aid. They want you to keep the cost down, which is understandable, but keep the financial aid up as high as possible, so it kind of squeezes out that revenue in the middle. What do you see in the graduate school? How do you see the graduate school kind of factoring into that whole equation?
Great question, because that's where we're gaining a lot of our revenue, is through the graduate programs, and also where we have the ability to really grow. And we've grown more in the graduate area than any place else. I think in the last year was like an 89% growth in graduate enrollment. So that's where we have an advantage to gain more revenue, to develop more programs, and it also helps us expand internationally. So if we want to grow our international student population, I believe it's going to be with graduate programming.
Thank you.
To hear that growth is absolutely fantastic. That's exciting in the graduate program.
It is. Says an alum from our MBA program as well.
Exactly.
In addition to the undergraduate. So we have a question from an alum in New York, John from the class of 1974, and you had just touched on this. Said that I've heard some discussions about expanding internationally. What are we doing in that realm now, or what are your initial impressions about the opportunities where we might be able to expand into some new international markets with some of our programs?
Right. So like I said, great opportunities there, particularly like many schools are looking at Southeast Asia, looking at India, looking at China. And I think when we go to expand the graduate program, it has to be in our areas of strength. So in the agricultural sector, looking at things like agribusiness, agricultural food policy areas, I think that is where we probably have the best reputation, and we'll be able to build upon that. So when you go out into international markets, you have to sell your strengths. And we're in talks with institutions in China now, and I think that it's a lot about building relationships, personal relationships, and so our faculty are very important in that arena. What relationships do they have abroad with different institutions? We have a great relationship with institutions in Poland through the Copernicus Society, and those are the types of things we can build upon and expand. But definitely, like anything else, like a domestic market, you have to do the market analysis. You have to understand what your costs are and what the pool that you would be attracting.
Piggybacking on that question, Cynthia from the class of 1980 from New York asked, what programs do you see as potential future graduate programs?
I think it touched upon those. So I think we really would have to look at where the greatest market is for those, and we're doing that now. What are, what do the, and it will depend. It will depend on which area, we're looking at internationally and domestically. And like I said, I think we have the greatest area of growth in where our strengths are. So in the agricultural arena, right now we can expand there. We can expand in maybe some areas in business, as well as the humanities and also the STEM fields. I think that it's just a matter of understanding our human capital, our capacity to offer these, what the advantages are to do that, and then putting the appropriate investments in to get the return. So all part of things that they're thinking about and will be very important for strategic planning. We're definitely going to be talking about that in great detail.
Thank you.
Can we leap into that a little bit, maybe?
Sure.
I know that you've been doing listening tour that many of us have been a part of, and if maybe you could talk about that in a little bit of the context of strategic planning and where you see some of those pieces fitting together as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. The listening tour has been great. I had sessions with community leaders. I've spoken with all the staff, faculty from all the different departments, undergraduate students, and now we have a graduate survey. They were harder to get to meet all at one time, and wonderful ideas from everybody. So we asked them questions about what we're doing right, where we can improve now, and so I think there's a lot of solid ideas. It's really too early to give you any specifics, but we've reflected this information back out, and to touch upon something I said earlier is that it's very obvious that we are student-focused, that we want the student experience to improve and the quality of that to even be more enhanced through the programming that we do, through the E360 experiential learning and internships that we provide, and that came out time and time again. And increasing the student experience was one thing, and the other theme that came out a lot was increasing community partnerships. And how would we reach out to the community, public-private partnerships, as well as with other institutions.
And to, I guess, elaborate on the strategic plan, I'm sure alumni are really interested in finding out how they kind of become more involved or how they fit in that puzzle as well.
Oh, absolutely. Alumni are extremely important. So we'll be reaching out to alumni through different mechanisms, such as events like this, through the Alumni Association, through the Alumni Engagement Office, as well as asking alumni to be on committees, specific committees that'll be put together to tackle specific goals and objectives. So I hope that we get a tremendous amount of input from alumni and get their perspective, and that will feed into the strategic plan.
And I will just add how valuable that has been in my experience here, and Melissa, I know you know this, in the last strategic plan, your predecessor as Alumni Council President, Pete Duane, who's here with us in the audience tonight, was part of the strategic planning process and was very helpful, as I know you will be. But as Dr. Gallo said, I think getting more people involved in more committees and spreading the net as wide as we can will be helpful.
Absolutely.
Only helpful. And we have a question from Florida, who wrote into a former Gator, who's very proud of those Gators who did well in the NCAA tournament recently. Not bad, final Elite Eight, right? That's not bad. Jennifer from the class of '94 wrote in saying that alumni in our industry talk about Del Val quite a bit and the impact it's had on our industry. We know a lot of people here have heard about Del Val, but some haven't. And she's asking, what points and things have you noticed that you'd like alums to talk about to other people if they meet somebody who has a family member who's a prospective student in high school, or what messages do you think we should be helping people portray as sort of ambassadors from Del Val, whether they're in Florida, New Jersey, or Hawaii, or any place else?
Great. That's a great question, and I just today had a email from a parent who had advice for me in this arena. And one of the things she pointed out, which I think was great, is she was saying that our placement in vet school is so high, and why don't we talk more about that? And I said, you're absolutely right. We need to market ourselves more in that area, and that's something I think we need to give those kinds of statistics to people to say, if you're interested in going to vet school, this is the place to come, because you will get the best training and you will get an opportunity to go to vet school. And I also want to point out, too, that, I would also mention we're strong in agriculture, obviously, but we offer so much more. So I think it would be valuable for alumni and others to talk about the different majors that we offer, and that we've become more than the National Farm School, although that's our traditional strength. I think we would also talk about the low faculty to student ratio, the experiential learning that's done here, that is essential. And the E360 program, I think we really need to sell that. 100% of our students have to, do the internships, and that gives them such an advantage in the workforce. And that is a differentiator. It's a big differentiator for us. So all those points of distinction, I think we should be able to elaborate on those, provide that information. It should be easy to access that, and to continually be updated on these facts. And for example, this past fall was our highest attendance record, right? Highest enrollment. And I think maybe many people don't know that. The greatest growth was in the graduate student attendance, but also, we grew at undergraduate level too. So those positive factors, need to be known and promoted.
Sure.
I would love to add, all those bullet points that you just mentioned were the reasons why I chose Del Val. I was really looking into going to vet school and wanted to go to the school that had obviously the best acceptance rate and top notch, had a great internship, we call the 360 program now, we'd complete hours and be able to get hands-on and, down and dirty, to call it the animal world, and have a great relationship with my professors. And that was everything you just summed up, so thank you.
And when you mentioned E360, and I think that the connection between alumni and students, we're doing this program this evening on a day where we had the career fair here on campus, and we saw some alums who came back and were talking to our students about job opportunities. It's amazing how many alums have hired another young alum to be a part of their business, or hosted interns. And I think, just to reiterate something you said before, that experiential learning for students is so valuable. So when alums can connect to students and vice versa, that's something our Alumni Engagement Office spends a lot of time on in our Center for Student Professional Development. Students want an outcome after their education here, right?
Absolutely.
And that internship can sometimes be a path to a job.
And the students love it. When I had the listening tour and they mentioned that was something they would like to see, even strengthened more if that was possible, and they understand the value of it.
You just talked about E360. Sorry about that, I lost my place.
That's all right.
Can you tell us a little bit, so as we said before, you were at some larger institutions that were Division I athletic programs. We just saw Florida on TV for a couple of weeks, and now a Division III athletic program with so many different programs and some incredible success. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you've seen and how you see athletics in the student-athlete life experience overall at Del Val?
Well, great. I think athletics is very important. They are students first and athletes second, for sure. But it's the gateway to the community. It's in the welcome mat as athletics. And I think it teaches also the students, teamwork and all sorts of important things. And so I see it as a valuable recruitment tool. If you have strong teams, you can get students to be interested in coming because they want to also play a sport. And we have, it will be available this fall, but we are now going to be competing in equestrian. And I think that's great. So we were a club before, we were very competitive as a club, and now it'll be a sport, and I think that'll be wonderful. So I love athletics. I like to go to as many events as possible. There's a lot of spirit there, there's a lot of camaraderie, and I know it's not all about winning, but it's good to win too. So it's nice to have at least a break-even 500 season or better. And so I think it's important to hire quality coaches and give the students a really great experience by being on a team and also getting a great education.
So I know I've been aware, I've seen some recent news and press about Del Val, and obviously the great things that we've been doing. I know one of our alumni, Joe from the class of 1973, has asked basically the same question. Anything in the future that Del Val's going to be doing that's going to be up and coming, that's going to put us right up front of that news? He's looking, just basically to know if anything's going to come up in the future.
I hope they're all positive, so we don't want to be in the news for anything negative, but I think we're making a great effort to, be out in the news, all the great things that the faculty and the students are doing, all the events, all the competitions that we're in. We're making a really great effort to reach out to different news media and get our names there. And one of the important things that's happened recently, for example, is a gift from Kate Littlefield, who is one of our Board of Trustees, in endowing a professorship, which is the first endowed professorship in the university's history, and that's an endowed professorship in plant science. So that's extremely exciting. It will focus on hydroponics and aquaponics, and we'll build a team around that position, and I hope to become leaders in that area. And this reaches us also into urban agriculture, as hydroponics and aquaponics is very popular there, as well as a good teaching tool, because you look at it as a whole system. You're looking at nutrient usage, water use efficiency, sustainable production on marginal lands, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, that's very exciting, and I like to be in the newspaper a lot about that.
That's what makes us so unique.
Yeah, absolutely. For a small private college to have that kind of programming is a differentiator for us, and we need to make that clear.
So the pipeline of questions continued, and we have some more from our studio audience. And it's funny because I was just going to ask you a little bit about the relationships with the university and the very local community in New Britain Borough and such, and we can certainly talk about that. The question that relates to that in some extent comes from Sam from the class of '84. Does the university have any potential plans to purchase some of the homes located between the football field and 202 if and when they might come on to the market? Maybe put that in the context of the overall neighborhood relations.
Sure, that's a good question. It's standard practice of universities to, if they can, purchase land that's adjacent to their property. It's a way of protecting, so make sure that nothing gets built close to the university that can detract from the university. So that's a standard practice. The other things, though, that universities are doing instead of purchasing outright properties is when developers are purchasing those or do purchase those, that we work in collaboration with them in a public-private partnership where they would put the money down to build, and then we would benefit from whatever it is that they would build on those properties. For example, residence halls, that they might build apartments or residence halls there. And the idea there would be not to detract from those that are currently living on campus, but to entice those who are living off campus to come back. And that's a great benefit. It also is a great recruiting tool, and it increases the vibrancy of the area. So there's also ideas to do mixed-use types of efforts on these properties so that there would be stores and restaurants that would be attractive not only to the student population, but to the staff and the faculty. So, all those ideas are on the table, and New Britain Borough has approached us because they want to make a university village along Butler. And we've had student focus groups meet with the developers to say what kind of stores they would like to see there. We've met with them to describe the types of needs we would have. And this gives us an opportunity to get new buildings and that maybe we couldn't afford to do ourselves, but we can do it in partnership. And many universities are doing this now, and I think it's well worth exploring.
Absolutely.
Sounds wonderful.
Our next question from the audience comes from Joe from the class of '73. Can you talk a little bit about how alumni can be more involved with student recruitment? You talked before about enrollment and enrollment growing and spreading the word about Del Val, and any thoughts you have in that realm?
We've spoken about this with our enrollment management, and I'm totally in favor of engaging alumni in this process. I think it requires some training, and we all have to be on the same page about branding and marketing and what the strategic areas are. But I think that alumni are a great resource, and they're all over the country, all over the world. We should be, for those who want to be engaged, allow them to participate, and we welcome it. So I know that we've talked about that, and we'll think of that as a strategic point or goal when we go and develop our new plan.
Sure. And interestingly, you mentioned alumni all over the country and the world, and I don't know if all of our audience knows this, but can you talk a little bit about some of your travels? You have logged thousands of miles since arriving in the summer and have spent time with alumni in all different locations and time zones, and you want to share a little bit about that?
It's been great. I had an opportunity to visit my alma mater in North Carolina, and while we were there, we took advantage of being in North Carolina and had a coffee and conversation, as we're calling it, for alums in North Carolina. Had a great turnout, and from alums at all different classes. Wonderful conversation, great ideas, and how they could form stronger alumni relations in their particular area. So visited North Carolina, Florida, California, and it was the same every place that we went. So great interactions, a lot of ideas, and identifying alums who want to be those point people in those states. And I think that's very important.
And that's one of the things you talked to me about last summer, was just expanding our alumni outreach efforts and really getting out to the folks wherever they were.
Right.
So thank you for taking all the time that you've taken already to do that.
Sure.
We have another question which is interesting on the economic perspective. Danielle from the class of 2007 is about energy savings. Says that saving energy to save wildlife is a large part of our mission at my organization, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about any energy saving initiatives at Del Val.
Wow, that's a
Timeline.
great
That-
question.
that's a
So we've talked about that,
Yeah.
how to be more sustainable, and talked about energy efficiency. We've talked about can some of our properties, I guess there was one time a discussion of a certain property be used to put solar panels there to invest in that, and then it would pay back in the future there. That's all on the table. I think the students are very passionate about that as well, and we need to be more efficient. So it's not just about extra revenue coming in or revenue generation, it's also about saving money and looking at opportunities where initially we'll invest, but then we'll get that investment back through those kinds of savings. So the first thing to do in those cases, in my opinion, is to do an energy audit and to understand what the uses are on all of our buildings and all of our different areas, and then build a plan around that as far as what would be the most economical to do, long and short term, and I agree with that.
You mentioned something earlier in the context of publicity, public relations. I thought maybe we could spend a little time talking, because not all of our audience necessarily knows this yet, although some people do. We have a few events here next week, which we'll touch on a little bit more in detail. But we have some journalists from CNN and NPR who will be on campus next week talking about what am I trying to say? News literacy, that's what I'm
Yes,
trying to
that's
say.
what you're trying
The
to
words
say.
were there, they just didn't come out. News literacy.
Sure.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That's very exciting for me. So as a scholarly activity in preparation for inauguration, I really wanted to talk about, journalists don't like to use this phrase, but fake news. But what does it mean for higher education? What does it mean for our students? Being able to navigate social media, other venues where students get information or possibly can get information, what is the best way to approach that? And I think all of our students need to be very literate when it comes to those areas. So it's very, very timely, I think, and it's getting more and more difficult because information is coming at you and it's hard to validate that and use it effectively. So I think it's going to be very exciting to have those two professionals and also one of our faculty as well engage in that discussion. And we really need good critical thinkers.
Absolutely.
So-
And for those in our audience, both here and watching at home, that program is next Wednesday, April 5th, and the professional journalists are Brian Stelter of CNN and David Folkenflik from NPR, and they'll be joined by Tanya Casas and Jess McCall from our faculty, and Jim O'Connor as well. And that program will be here next Wednesday night at 7 as part of the inauguration festivities, and tickets are still available, but I know as of yesterday, this is a 450-seat auditorium. We were already about 300 and change that have been taken. It's a free event, and we will be broadcasting it, and we will be sharing it with those who are not able to be here in person, but we hope that some of you will be able to be here in person. And on that note, maybe Melissa, could I ask you to talk a little bit about some of the other alumni events that are coming up? I know there's some things that you wanted to mention.
Absolutely. So obviously our big day, April the 6th, which we're looking forward to, is inauguration. Obviously it's big and important. A-Day is coming up, which I'm very, very excited about, April 21st to the 23rd. Very fun day on campus. As a student, I always loved participating in A-Day. One of my favorite parts was the milkshakes, so they were always so much fun. And of course, the funnel cake. Who doesn't love funnel cake? And big, big day, homecoming. See the date, October the 14th. So Del Val, of course, will come out shining that day as well, and hopefully the skies will be shining, the sun will be here, and it's going to be a very fun day.
Looking forward to it.
And on the inauguration, we're really thrilled that we have delegates from roughly 50 colleges and universities who will be attending. And as many of you know, the academic tradition is that the delegates come in the sort of reverse order of their founding of the institutions. And as of now, the first institution in time that's represented is Yale University, which was founded in 1701. And we also have some folks coming from as far away as Hawaii, which will be wonderful. So we hope to see as many of you on campus as possible. And again, we'll also be broadcasting all of those events. And that's something we really want to do. We want to capture everything that's happening here on campus because we realize that not everybody can be here all the time, especially folks out on the West Coast and other parts of the country. But we want to bring all of these events to you, whether it's in person or in your living room. So we're going to continue to use video as much as we possibly can. That, I think, is a wrap, as they say in the business, and I just want to spend time to say thank you so much to alums who are here with us in person. Thank you those who've taken the time to watch this. Thank you everybody who has supported the program. And most of all, thank you to Melissa as our Alumni Council President for all of your leadership and everything you do to make Del Val a better place and to connect alumni and students. And above all, thank you, Dr. Gallo, for all of your time, all of your energy, all of your passion, and spending all of your time that you do with alumni and making a difference in their lives and letting them get to know you.
That's great. I enjoyed it. I love my job. I always tell everybody that, and it's sincere. I love it, and I love all the people that I've met and the engagement that we've had, and I look for more ideas on how we can connect and reach out and become, the best institution that we can. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everybody, and
much.
good night.
Thank you.